coming behind, looking like the road's real clear. So I drive at the pace I like, pretty slow to most of you, but very fast to me, you see. I like to walk down the middle line all the time, 'cause that's where I find my peace of mind.
Hello and welcome. I'm Doug McVay and I am your host. More than a decade ago, back while I was living back east, just outside Washington, D.C., we're holding a series of protests to get the Justice Department to stop their raids on medical cannabis facilities in California. How times change, right? Well, one element of those protests involved minor civil disobedience actions like sit-ins and mass arrests. So back in September of 2002, my good friend and colleague Charles Thomas, who helped co-found the Marijuana Policy Project before he moved on to start the group Unitarian Universalists for Drug Policy Reform, and I handcuffed ourselves to the White House fence, right up there in the middle of the tourist's favorite picture spot. That's a violation of Code of Federal Regulations. Anyway, swarm of journalists, a picture of the two of us with a Stop Arresting Patients sign made it into USA Today. There's no article, a small cut line, but as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. The person who arranged for that swarm of journos, that was my friend Adam Eidinger. Adam, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
It's great to hear your voice. My friend, it has been too long. I hope things are going well in D.C. Actually, just tell folks about the work you're doing these days.
I like to tell a little story about how Hemp History Week got started, if that's all right.
Please.
Okay, so it's just what is a really amazing marketing and media extravaganza involving people like Ziggy Marley and Alicia Silverstone, the Hollywood actress, and you've got a lot of different celebrities. I don't even know them all at the moment, but they're all Ashley Croft, who's, if you're into sort of the Martha Stewart world of healthy living, you know who Ashley Croft is. There's all these great folks that are involved, and they are trying to spread the word at the same time in supermarkets and at college campuses, in theaters, and lots of restaurants who actually change their menus for the week, and they put hemp food on the menu for the week. And this happens. I mean, there's over 1,000. I think 1,200 events this year. Actually, is the number, and they're all over the United States, and they're even internationally. And the way this all got started was because of Leicester Dewey, and his diaries were discovered just a few years ago. And who was Leicester Dewey? Do you know who he was?
Lester C. Dewey, United States Department of Agriculture.
That's right. He was the chief fiber botanist, and for a number, basically 30 years, and oversaw the maintenance of the U.S. government's supply of vital hemp seed. In case of emergencies, we had hemp seed that was being bred by the U.S. government. And he grew the hemp plants at a place called Arlington Farms, which is right across the river in Virginia from Washington, D.C. And Arlington Farms today is the site of the Pentagon. And these diaries, along with photographs that were really spectacular because they include him measuring a 16-foot tall hemp plant as well as separating seeds from the flowering tops, he used this his daily diary to log all the different varieties of hemp seed from around the world that he was getting, and then breeding into a local variety called Arlington Hemp, which was the variety that they had grown in Virginia for hundreds of years. And then he'd breed in some Chinese hemp, and he'd breed in some Italian hemp, and he'd bring in some Russian hemp, and he would make what was a stronger variety in the end that had more characteristics that were beneficial of all U.S. agencies, the U.S. military, for the Navy. And the main production was for cloth and for rope, and it was ending up in the Navy, even with steamships and gas-powered naval technology, you still use these ropes. And when the war began in World War II, if it wasn't for Leicester Dewey spending 30 years keeping the genetics alive in the United States, because really most of the hemp that was in the United States in that period was imported from the Philippines. When the Japanese took the Philippines, they took all the hemp production. And we were our new ships didn't have any ropes. And at that time, nylon wasn't really, synthetics weren't really a viable thing. They were still using natural fiber for rope. So this was a strategic thing that took place, and ultimately Leicester Dewey was there and watched the Hemp for Victory program. He was retired at that point, but he could watch Hemp for Victory take place, and that was a 3-year plan to ramp up U.S. hemp production. It started in 41, and by 44, they were growing 400,000 acres of hemp, and all that hemp came from the genetics of Leicester Dewey. So we discovered his diaries. The Hemp Industry Association purchased them, and to this day, they reside in my home, which is also the campaign headquarters for the DC Cannabis Campaign. They're in the room with me right now, and we have the pictures framed on the wall downstairs for everyone to see. And that it started with a newspaper article basically about this guy and about the connection to the Pentagon, and it was very Washington. This is all happening here. He lived in the District of Columbia, and he would take the bus to Arlington to work on his fields every day. And he was a very disciplined man. There was no evidence that he smoked marijuana, but there's no evidence that he smoked anything, actually. He was a good Christian. But I've read his diaries from when he was 12 years of age to the day he died. And it's so we have this. I have this connection to him, and I think about what we're doing here, and it's Hemp History Week, and now that there's a tremendous amount of education going on. A lot of people point to Jack Hare, but I think if Jack Hare was alive, he'd also point to Leicester Dewey.
Oh yeah, no, Leicester was a big writer, and a lot of his work for the USDA. We got back in the mid 80s, 86. My friend Barry went out to D.C. and he went to the Library of Congress and he did a lot of research, brought back dozens and dozens of articles, including stuff from the USDA and copies of congressional hearings and the like. We took the steamer trunk, and it was January. We took a steamer trunk filled with these articles, and on a normal tour, Barry came down to the down along the West Coast, down to California. We went to Los Angeles, where Chris Conrad was working with Jack Hare on the revised edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, which is more like the ones that people see today, with the cool graphics nicely laid out. Jack and Chris were having a bit of an argument, artistic differences. When we came walking in to their, walking up, knocked on the door, dropped this steamer trunk full of information, said, "Here, we think you guys could use this." And, Chris, it's, wow, you've got his actual personal diaries. That is amazing.
Yeah, they're, we're keeping them in like an archival box, and we really like to eventually use them as the foundation for a national museum about cannabis. There are a number of archivists and collectors around the country that have been talking about this for quite a few years. I think if cannabis does become fully legalized in the United States, then this will be an appropriate story to be told to future generations in a museum setting, that there was a time when this wasn't legal and it wasn't a normal thing, and now it is. But here's the history, how we got to this point, because people didn't know the history of prohibition around this plant.
And that's the thing, so that's one of the reasons for the name of the show, From Thoughts to Action. Thinking about it, learning about it, and then taking the next step in doing something. Adam, I know you've got to get back to work. My gosh, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to be on, and take care.
You too, my friend. Cheers now. And let's do that commercial break, shall we?
listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
As I talk to the people from New York State, I realize the need for money to deal with this problem. I am glad that in this administration we have increased the amount of money for handling the problem of dangerous drugs sevenfold. It will be $600 million this year. More money will be needed in the future. I want to say, however, that despite our budget problems, to the extent money can help in meeting the problem of dangerous drugs, it will be available. This is one area where we cannot have budget cuts because we must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
Just a little thought, some silly song. Know what you'll say? You'll say I'm all gone. I've opened my mind to this little green seed. Could help us with pollution and the economy. And this little miracle got to ascend. It's got lots of names, so hey, let's call it hemp. It's the fastest natural resource the world's ever seen. It's got 77% cellulose. It's a lot more than trees, we say. So many uses, from textiles to tents. Build your house at a lot less expense. You can burn it as a fuel to say make electricity. And it would be a lot nicer to the air that we breathe. We say top quality paper for the dollars you dream. Ropes up to medicines and the proteins we need. Paints, fabrics, varnishes is money well spent. Lincoln himself read his treaty on hemp. But you tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You say yeah that I'm too gone for you. So it's a drug with like your cigarettes, your money and your coffee and those TV sets. Alcohol maybe is the one you should fear. It kills 100,000 of you every year. In 10,000 years, no one has died of a toke. What's not very nice is that CIA coke. I know what you say, it's the devil I'm from. Would you vote me into office if I built you a bomb? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You say yeah that I'm too gone for you. You'd lock me up just for growing a weed. Everyone knows that nothing makes sense. You can lie and cheat on the blind, but you cannot smoke hemp. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. You say yeah that I'm too gone for you. Whoopie-doo. I want you to tell me I'm wrong. Tell me
Good day and good morning, everyone. Welcome to From Thought to Action. I am Doug McVay, your host. You're listening to the Time for Hemp Network, and it's a beautiful morning here in Oregon. We're going to get straight to our first guest. He's a very good friend of mine from, long enough ago, we'll just say I've known him for a very long time. He's the guy who runs a thing called the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation. He's been working on cannabis legalization and hemp issues for, my gosh, longer than me. And that's saying a lot, my friends. And
well, it's almost as long. I remember we were both quite young back then.
I remember
30 years ago.
I remember you getting here, and I got just around you. I remember you walking out back to the author's place to pitch your tent after you arrived down here in Portland. With a lot of ambitions and a lot of dreams, and you have built yourself an incredibly successful business. And I should probably say your name since we've already heard your voice. That, of course, is Paul Stanford. My good friend, almost namesake, Douglas Paul Stanford, actually.
Yeah.
I used to answer the phone. This is Doug,
name.
and you mean Doug Paul? No, Doug McVay. And so Paul, have you been? You're still working on the hemp issue, right? Have you been doing anything with this Hemp History Week that we've just had?
You know, I have promoted a number of Hemp History Week events. In our, Casper and I host a weekly live television show, and so we've had several people on that were showing that excellent documentary on industrial hemp called Bringing It Home, so we've been promoting it that way. That's my main way of helping with Hemp History Week. But if you go back to the Great Book of Hemp, which is written by Richard Rowan out there, it would say that my companies here in Portland, Oregon, were the first companies to import hemp paper and fabric back in 89, 1990, and 91. Tree-free eco paper and rope walk paper and fiber. They're listed actually on page 3 and 4 of that book, The Great Book of Hemp. But I did that as a business from 89 to 97. I spent too much on offices and payroll and not enough on inventory, so I went out of business then. But, you learn lessons in business, and that was one of them. So came back, and much to my surprise now, to be honest about it, have a series of medical clinics across the country where we have about 15 doctors that help patients everywhere from Maine to Hawaii get medical marijuana permits. But our strongest base of operations is in Oregon and Washington State, where we helped about a little over 31,000 patients over the past 12 months get their medical marijuana permit just in the state of Oregon. Now, there are only about 58,000 medical marijuana patients, so we have a pretty strong monopoly position of over 55% of those patients come through our clinic. And out of the remaining 45%, they've come through our clinics in the past. About 25 to 50% of those who now get their own doctor to do it. And so we have the ability to reach out to a lot of medical marijuana patients.
Very well done. It's the, of course, in case people think that there's explosive growth in the medical cannabis patient registry out here, people have to jump through hoops every single year, even if they have conditions for which we don't really have a cure, whether it's multiple sclerosis or glaucoma or HIV/AIDS, things that are in fact going to deteriorate over time. We make patients go through the time and the trouble and the expense of proving to a doc every year that they've still got this basically incurable thing.
We're also our clinics, THCF medical clinics, are the presenting sponsor at the Seattle Hemp Fest as well. So that's an honor to be in the world's largest pro-marijuana festival.
It's going to be a lot of fun again this year. Paul, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's good to have you on as a guest, my friend.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Tell y'all a little bit about a plant I know that can save the world. It grows long and tall and has flowers that can make your mind swirl. It's a funky plant with a fiber that is resistant to rain and mold. It's the strongest plant fiber known to man, the best rope you'll ever hold. Well, the pioneers covered up the wagon trains with a canvas made of hemp. And Washington and Jefferson grew it on their farms, said to make the most of it. First stars and stripes were sown on hemp, first constitution too. This is around the world for food, fiber, oil, medicine, and fuel. And if we press the seeds, we won't have no need for any other oil. We can make paints and inks, or run our car, we'll go back next season. It'll fix the soil, the most nutritious seed we can put in our mouth with omega-6 and 3. We can feed the world with the tree of life and live sustainably. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's the God's plan, going wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La 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 la. Whoa, whoa.
Call it dope. Can also be made into oil or rope. Some people say you smoke it and you feel fantastic, but from hemp you can make an alternative to plastic. Made from plants, not petroleum, you see, so it won't still be around in 4003. It can biodegrade, which means there'll be less pollution. Just another reason for a hemp revolution.
The flowers of the female hemp plant make the best medicines on earth. Helps cancer and AIDS patients eat their food. Helps those with depression overcome the blues. Glaucoma, epilepsy, nausea, insomnia, stress, neurosis, psychosis, pain, PMS. All the studies have been done and all the doctors agree, but they can't make money off this plant, you see, because it's free. It grows from a seed, wild and free like we ought to be. You know the future is grown in our own backyards. If we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to be. We'll grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's the God's plan, going wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La 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 la. Whoa, whoa.
In the mid-1930s, it was the billion-dollar crop with the invention of the decorticator that could produce it non-stop. But then a smear campaign with Mexicans to blame started making people thinking to make your brain go pop. Yeah, since understand it's never stop. It ain't like getting high for paint and crack rock. Time to bring it back to nature, time to bring back some life. Let the farmers do their job, stop giving them strife. Renewable resources, life-giving forces. Panels for your cars and saddles for your horses. DuPont, Monsanto, making the wrong choices. Suicide genes, extinguishing our voices. Cutting down the trees, polluting the 7 seas. Leaving the fate of the planet to the corporate entities. Corrupt politics, warfare, disease. Now it's time to make a change, it's time to plant seeds.
Pepper so nutritious, you the oil seeds. It gives you all the protein you will ever need. You can make it in a sandwich with jelly or jam, or make it in a soap or a lotion for your hands. You can make it into fuel, put it right in our cars, and we won't need the oil and won't have to start wars. You can make it into paper, right, as much as you please, cause it grows like a weed and we won't have to cut trees. So put your faith in hemp, such a versatile plant, and don't let the government tell us we can't, cause hemp can help us all in so many ways, and it doesn't mean that we will all be living in a daze. Versatility, sustainability, look at history, it ain't no mystery, hemp for victory.
If we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. We grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's the good God's plan, grow wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La 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 la. Whoa, whoa. So in this modern day and age, when we seem to lack spirituality, this one single plant can bring us back almost 10,000 years in history. To the Shiva, Piranhas, the Jesus, the Christ, to the Buddha, the pagans, the goddess, the light, to commune with all the animals, along with all the trees. To realize we gotta see, cause inside me, as the earth is the mother, we gotta take care of the earth, cause the earth is the mother that gives life birth. And we can heal all our relations with a single green plant, and we can start right now.
We got to legalize, we're gonna come alive. All the people who know what's up, gonna say what the heck we letting these suckers get away with it for. Come on and open the door. Are you with me? Are you with me? It's gonna take more than hippies to shut the suckers down. We're not fooling around, but they're keeping us divided, opposite-sided. What do we Americans do? We keep buying it. Black and white, they're making us fight and still in the same racist hatred justifies violence over nature's gotta wake up and see. The real enemy is the powers that be. From the opposition seat, wake up now to nature's creation. Sacred herb can unite the nations. Gotta legalize the herb of iration. All of this use is gonna heal the nation. Heal the nation. Heal the nation. Gonna heal the nation. Gonna heal the nation.
Hi there, it's Steve Bloom and the Celeb Stoner Show. Welcome back. We're on Time for Hemp. Thanks to Casper Leach giving me the opportunity to reach out to many more people. And today, we're very excited to have a very special guest. My guest is Mitch Earleywine, who is the chairman of the board of Normal. Welcome, Mitch.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for taking some time. Now, Mitch, we'll let people know a little bit more about you today, but people who know you well, of course, know that you work up at the SUNY Albany, which is State University of New York. At Albany, you're a professor of psychology there. So how many years have you been at SUNY Albany?
So I was at University of Southern California for 14 years, and we moved out here in 2005, and it's been a productive move and a good one.
So where are you from?
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, if you can believe that, although I was born on the Air Force Base in Riverside, California.
Wow, no kidding. So you're Midwest, West Coast, East Coast. What do you prefer?
Right now, the East Coast is good for where I am in my life. Let's say that.
So I was looking at your university's website, and I went to your page, and it says that you teach a drug class. That sounds like a fun class. What's your drug class about?
It's intriguing because it started out with probably 50 people and now has 464. So it's definitely caught on. Just basically walk through the history, pharmacology, epidemiology, and general subjective effects of all the drugs of abuse. And then, as you might guess, given my book, Understanding Marijuana, there's a big focus on cannabis and its history and pharmacological effects and potential medical uses.
Sounds like they must sell tickets to that class, huh?
It does tend to fill up pretty quickly. So
So where are things at for NORML these days? There's a lot of organizations out there. NORML always started it, has the history. You've had the MPP and a lot of other groups come along doing their thing. As there has been some, disagreements, I think, between the organizations over the years. But where does NORML, fit in right now into the whole legalization debate? I mean, is NORML getting the credit it deserves, or is it sort of playing a secondary role at this point?
It's intriguing because I feel like what NORML does that a lot of organizations don't do is have these local chapters. So we're here to facilitate folks who want to get active in their own communities and make sure that they can get a focus on the things that are most important to them within that area. And you don't have a local marijuana policy project chapter. You don't have a local drug policy alliance chapter in the same sort of way. So I think that we definitely facilitate in that way. That, of course, can be a two-edged sword. So some folks do run awry or go in directions that we don't necessarily always go. But I think that that's the kind of freedom that we love to see in an open market, and something that might be the path to getting cannabis laws changed in a whole bunch of locales, one step at a time.
But do you feel that you're getting the credit that NORML deserves? Because I noticed in the interview with Ladybud, you sort of seem to indicate that NORML sometimes doesn't get the credit it deserves.
It's funny because I feel like, in part because it's been around so long, people are just accustomed to it handling certain things. And then a lot of the things that we do end up being the things that aren't necessarily right there in front and center in people's minds. So helping to file briefs in order to avoid police from searching your house when they're claiming they can smell something. That's not something that necessarily hits the headlines the way proposing a new law does, or going to a state house and ranting and raving might. And I feel like we do tons and tons of work for individual users who've been busted, who need legal advice or help in some way. And, of course, we don't publicize that because it's often confidential or something that an individual might not want to make a big public deal. And so I think there are ways to market some of that without it, sacrificing anybody's confidentiality. And I would like to see us get more credit for that sort of work.
Well, when, Portland, say in Maine, passes legalization, or, Colorado, the MPP got a lot of the credit. I mean, I think they spent a lot of money up in Portland. They did the bus shelter ads, and, Colorado, I think they were part of the team, which of course included NORML. But is NORML doing what MPP is doing, working hard locally to change laws, or is that really MPP's strength and NORML's strength lies elsewhere?
I do find that MPP does a stellar job at the state level, making new proposals and getting cannabis reform laws in front of legislators. But we tend to do that too with a smaller crew and a smaller staff. And I do feel like in some of the examples you just mentioned, MPP absolutely deserves the credit that they got, but we were very much there and very much shaking hands, writing letters to editors, making sure op-eds had an opportunity to get into the hands of the potential voters, and really, playing along as part of that team, even if we weren't necessarily the person throwing the most money at it.
What's your sort of chief goal with NORML at this point? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do?
What I'd really like to see is a broader involvement from the little folks. So when laws do change, more and more people will get the opportunity to say, hey, I was a part of that. And I think breaking through this idea, I don't make a difference, or I'm just one guy, or something like that is something I'd really like to change, not just for this topic, but for any topic in law and politics. And so I'm really trying to reach out to more people more broadly in the hopes of not only raising funds, but really increasing awareness, helping people come out more, getting people to talk to their buddies more about these topics, and then be the sort of person who drives somebody else to the voting booth when the relevant laws are up for grabs.
So you are an author as well. You've written Understanding Marijuana, Parents' Guide to Marijuana, Mind-Altering Drugs, The Secrets, The Science of Subjective Experiences. Are people understanding marijuana at this point? Where are we at from the time you wrote that book to where we are now? Is there a greater understanding? Are people getting it? What's going on?
It's intriguing. Some myths have really died, and that's been a real delight, and then some are still really hanging on, and so that's kind of a source of frustration. I rarely hear any marijuana causes aggression arguments anymore. And in the early 2000s, I'd still occasionally get one of those, marijuana makes somebody beat their wives, or marijuana makes people fight. And I mean, it's just so preposterous. It's out of this world. And in the laboratory experiments, even when you provoke people after they've used marijuana, they don't get more aggressive. It's usually the placebo group who's disappointed they didn't get real pot.
That's generally, accepted that, people who smoke pot are pretty laid back versus, the old marijuana alcohol argument where, alcohol people get a little, over the top, marijuana laid back. Isn't that generally accurate?
In fact, the data support that really well, and alcohol-induced aggression is pretty common and actually an easy thing to get in the lab, so I'm glad to hear that we don't have to battle that one anymore. In contrast, I still get some amotivational syndrome stuff, which kind of blows my mind, the occasional gateway theory person, and now we're getting a lot of marijuana causes mental illness things, and the data really don't support any of those, and I'm happy to walk through them if you think they'd be interesting.
Well, people like Ann Coulter and Nancy Grace, they're playing off of the lazy stoners. They've been bringing that up quite a bit. Ann Coulter even used the R word, recently. Like to use the word related to marijuana users. So that's still hanging in there. Amotivational syndrome is a tough one to fight off because of the stereotype of the stoner. Sitting on the couch, eating the Doritos, that type of mentality. How do you combat that?
Well, it's interesting because you can actually turn to the economics literature. There's some laboratory work and just some self-report things. The econ literature, Kasner had a paper out in the 90s, actually two of them, suggesting that folks who use cannabis are certainly no different from others as far as work hours and wages earned and things like that. And one data set actually had, for the men at least, the more pot they had smoked in their lives, the more money they made, which, I mean, obviously it's not causal, but it's certainly kind of comic and flies in the face of that amotivational syndrome issue. And then back in the 70s, folks would bring participants in the lab and have them get high and have to do various tasks for money. And it's cute because one of the studies had 6 men who were building chairs for $2 a piece, and they would have to smoke pot on certain days and not on other days, and they immediately went on strike for more money per chair. And I just find that, also kind of flies in the face of this notion of amotivational syndrome. And then finally, just self-reported, how motivated are you, how interested are you in things. Once you take medical users out, people who have got, cancer and AIDS and things like that, you really don't see any differences. And when you do see amotivational symptoms, it's usually folks who are clinically depressed, and a lot of times they're the same across the users and the non-users. My student Sarah Smucker had a paper on that in 2006. It's actually freely available at Harm Reduction Journal.
Well, as far as parents, being the author of Parents' Guide to Marijuana, where is that at right now? Parents in relating to their children, or let's just say their grown-up kids, or whatever is the relationship between parents and children regarding marijuana. Where is that? Is that changing?
In fact, it is, and it's intriguing. I'm happy to see how candid both parents and teens have gotten in these discussions. When I was down at University of Central Florida, we talked about this quite a bit. And the hope is for each side to kind of reassure the other one that this is just part of a bigger relationship that they're having and part of a whole set of conversations they're going to have about being safe, expressing love for each other, and saying, I'm worried about you, and here's why, or I want to reassure you this is not troublesome, and here's why. And sometimes it's about laying out data, in big studies, but a lot of times it's about explaining what's going on for you personally. So I always encourage college students who are, functioning well and making sure they're getting their work done before they necessarily hit the vaporizer to be very candid about that with their parents so that they can make sure that their parents don't have to be upset about any kind of risks that they might think are associated with the plant. And then on the flip side, parents who are older and, they're making as much money as they feel like they need to make, they've got more free time now that their kids are away, to be candid with their children and say, look, this is something I'm going to do. I've got it under control in these certain ways. I don't see any negative consequences. If you see me doing X, Y, or Z, feel free to comment. But this is something I'm setting myself up for, and I've built my life around this.
Well, I'm not a parent, so I don't deal with these issues. But what's your advice to parents when a teenager is getting up there into the 15, 16, 17-year-old age, and perhaps they haven't smoked or they want to know more? The parent maybe is more experienced with it. Should parents smoke and use marijuana with their children? What's your advice on that?
It's funny because I've been asked that before, and I'm a little reluctant about that, pre-age 18, just because the data on, dependence, if it really does exist with cannabis, or at least problematic use, tends to suggest that the earlier you start, the more likely you are to develop some kind of problematic use. And the brain structure data are not really outrageous, but there's a potential there that maybe there's some kind of interruption here. And then folks who are at risk for a subset of psychotic disorders may bring them on a little earlier if they're heavily involved in cannabis at a young age. And I think the candor about those kinds of data and saying, I'm not saying never smoke pot, I'm saying would you mind waiting until you're older, because I'm concerned about brain development in your case. And then I do want to talk about making sure you're an experienced driver, making sure you understand the respiratory health, making sure that this is not going to be the central focus of your life so much as something you do as a whole set of leisure skills and a whole set of activities that you have, not just this one arrow in your quiver.
Do you think there's a big distinction between smoking at 16 versus 18? I mean, is that really going to affect your brain significantly, perhaps negatively, when you're at that age versus 2 years later?
It's sad because we don't have enough data to really make a definitive argument, but there are definitely some critical developments there, even if it's not necessarily at the neuronal level, as far as frontal lobe function and emotional regulation and things like that. And then just the familiarity with all the tasks that you have to do between 16 and 18 is actually pretty big. So you're a much better driver at 18 than 16. You seem to have a better handle on some of the time management and some of the emotion regulation involved in social interactions. And so there certainly is a chance to say, let's put this off a little longer to help get a handle on all these other domains.
Well, a very smart way to put it. I mean, it's, the head of NORML or the head of the board of NORML can't say it's okay for kids at 16 to start smoking pot. Not going to win you a lot of But, there's a really interesting issue right now, a parent and children issue regarding medical marijuana. I'm sure you're following. That's the CBD issue that's I just posted that 4 states are on the verge of passing CBD-only laws, and that is coming from, children at a very young age with epilepsy or other seizure disorders, parents finding that when they use marijuana, especially in the form of an oil with a low THC, high CBD, essentially hemp oil, that it benefits them, reduces the number of seizures, and that's become forefront right now in the medical marijuana movement. A lot of states are starting to change their laws just around that. So I'm curious what you think of that. Is that an acceptable approach for medical marijuana at this point, that that states just limit it to only CBD and no other use, or do you think that's the wrong way to go?
It's funny because I don't think that this is necessarily the most efficient way to keep people out of jail or make sure our court system isn't all clogged up. But I can't begrudge anybody whose child is having seizures whatever medication they need. We've known since the early 90s that CBD was an effective anti-seizure med, and I'm stunned that it took us this long to really make this happen. But I'm afraid that folks are getting lulled into this false sense of security because some of the early work, at least the case study type work, it was not 0% THC that the strains that were decreasing these seizures. It was relatively low and higher CBD. And so I'm hopeful that these are still going to work based on some of the laboratory stuff that was done with cannabidiol. But I feel like folks may find this isn't quite as effective as something that has a different ratio that is not THC at 0, and that they may kind of look back on this and think, we misstepped there. We should have gone for whole plant with a lot more options, because these reactions are so idiographic. Each individual kid responds to different proportions and different medications as the seizures develop.
It seems like an amazing development. Once Sanjay Gupta at CNN has sort of brought this to national attention, all of a sudden you have legislatures all over the place coming up with these new laws, and almost all of them, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Utah, are all being sponsored by Republicans. So now it's sort of okay for a Republican legislator to sponsor marijuana legislation as long as it doesn't involve people getting high, but they're going to use marijuana for medicine, but it won't get them stoned. So, we're kind of confusing people a little bit on medical marijuana now, or is this just a different, it's almost like my question today was, if these pass, is that then therefore a legitimate medical marijuana state? Will Georgia be considered a medical marijuana state? Is it legitimately medical marijuana, or is it just really restrictive?
See, and I would say, no, it's really not medical marijuana, because other folks with other disorders, including some of the folks with the seizure disorders, are not going to get the kind of treatment they need. And I was worried that maybe Republicans were kind of running an end around on the medical marijuana movement by proposing these, because, in fact, cannabidiol is not going to help with nausea and vomiting the way THC does. It's not quite as good with insomnia as THC is. It's certainly not going to be as helpful for pain as THC is. So there's a whole other set of folks with very serious, debilitating, problematic symptoms who are not going to get any relief from some cannabidiol-based oil, and so then they're left out in the cold. And then if Republican legislators are going to say, oh, we already gave you the CBD, run away now, leave us alone, these folks are still going to be suffering.
That be the case, or will it just sort of kick open the door and maybe there'll be room for new legislation or amending?
I mean, I can always hope that once they see the cannabidiol oil doesn't make the sky fall, they'll be more open to medical cannabis, but I'm still a little apprehensive about these bills and wish folks would go for a regular medical marijuana bill instead.
On the legalization front, how excited are you about what's been going on in Colorado?
I've been completely delighted since those laws passed. It's intriguing to watch the process of how all this gets hashed out and how each individual community is going to sort of grapple with how they want to, sort of balance freedom against regulation here. And I honestly couldn't be happier. The fact that more and more states are considering this, particularly as the taxes are rolling in at Colorado, is a real delight for me. So I'm pretty thrilled.
Have you been there yet since it's legal?
I have not, and it's funny because years ago Dave Lenson published a book that basically implied that once marijuana is legal, it won't get you high anymore, and I'm eager to see if that's true.
What's going to be NORML's role in Colorado?
There's a chance to basically dovetail with the industries out there, make sure that NORML can be as big a help as possible in the center of where it's potentially needed most, and to take advantage of setting up websites, making sure NORML can in some ways benefit from that market in ways we might not get if we were only in Washington, D.C.
In Utah, it's interesting. They're saying the Department of Agriculture would grow hemp and then turn that into oil and make it available. They're talking about trials and things like that, getting into these experimental trial programs. Will that work?
I know that it could work, but some folks who normally aren't necessarily big on medical cannabis are suddenly going to have to be taking a lot of initiative, putting in a lot of effort, and in truth, spending a lot of money. You can't just start growing hemp in your backyard the way they may have envisioned that, and it's not exactly a really straightforward process turning that into an oil that's necessarily going to be high in CBD and low in THC. So just getting a hold of the appropriate strains, growing them in the correct way in a big enough place where you can actually generate enough oil to help a bunch of children is not an overnight project.
All right, Mitch, thank you so much for your time. Mitch Earleywine, the head of the NORML Board of Directors and professor of psychology at SUNY Albany, author of Understanding Marijuana, many other research projects you're involved in. We could spend the next hour and a half talking, but I really appreciate you spending time for hemp. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth. Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
Look at all that money. Yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Throughout Earth's history, hemp's been used, no mystery. Hemp is legal to pay your taxes for more than a century. Check your faxes, the founding fathers made sense to me. It's time to grow hemp legally. It's time to grow hemp legally. It's time to grow hemp legally. Think of all the uses. It's money that's well spent. Right now, no excuses. It's time for hemp. Sustainable green industry. That's our intent. A better place this world will be. It's time for hemp. Fuel and food and clothes and soap. Housing, cars, yeah, cars, no joke. Henry Ford built a car of hemp. It's time for us to do it again. People be employed, balanced farming as it's meant. Right now, it's time for hemp. Hemp is the first necessity of wealth and protection of the country. Words of Jefferson Thomas. He grew hemp, why not us? It's time to lift the hemp ban. It's time to lift the hemp ban. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. You can make a difference. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Look at all that money. Yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp.
Ever wonder what you need to do if you're stopped by the police? Well, I suggest you go to aclu.org and check out what Ellen James White has to say. It's a great public service announcement, and I would suggest that you share it with all your friends. You see, we rely on the police to keep us safe and treat us all fairly, regardless of race, background, origin. This public service provides tips for interacting with police and understanding your rights. Some state laws may vary. Separate rules apply at checkpoints when entering the United States. But you should know your rights. Do go to the aclu.org and check them out. In the meantime, you can hear what Ellen has to say here on Time for Hemp.
So let's say that you were stopped by the cops or like an immigration officer. It's weird that the American Civil Liberties Union would ask me to do this. It's not like I have ever had problem with... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Sorry. Continue, I'll do it. Let's go. Let's make this happen. There are some handy things to know if you happen to be in that situation. I think up until this very moment, when I was stopped by the cops, I was using the rules that Jay-Z said in 99 Problems. We all know, like, the basics, like the stuff that we learned on Law and Order. You have the right to remain silent. You have a right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. There's some things that you probably want to say out loud, like clearly, like really let the officer know exactly what you mean, you know? Like that whole remain silent. You can say, like, I am remaining silent. I mean, just say it immediately and then just shut up. Like, that's all you had to do. And if you actually get arrested, say out loud, clearly, I want an attorney. And also remember, you can tell the cops, I do not give you permission to search my shit. You probably shouldn't say shit. You say stuff, car, my house, my belongings. But you probably should steer clear of the whole don't search my shit. But you can totally think it. And please, for the love of God, do not resist arrest, okay? I know sometimes, like, you might even be thinking to yourself, this motherfucker is arresting me, and I didn't even do shit, son. You don't know me. You do not know me. Just go along with it, you know? Like, get your attorney, call your local chapter of the ACLU, okay? But just don't fight it. And just make sure your hands are clearly visible at all times, you know? We don't want any of those, oops, I didn't know what he was reaching for moments, you know? We don't need that, okay? And another thing, if a cop questions you and you ask, can I leave? And he's like, yeah, you can leave. Just walk away. Leave. You don't have to continue past that point. I'm not saying, like, act a fool and throw deuces up and be like, F your couch, cop! I'm not saying all that. And please note, these rules apply even if you don't have your papers, okay? If you don't have your papers, you still have, like, these weird things called constitutional rights, you know? Even though some people try to pretend like you don't. But at the same time, don't, like, lie about your immigration status, okay? Don't, like, hand over, like, fake papers that you got from some dude in a trench coat and a funky hat. In my mind, that's where you would get, like, fake papers from, like, a dude in a funky hat and a trench coat, you know? And he probably just smells like cigarettes and regret. Also, let me say this for my hermanos out there, okay? No notices documentos falsos. Solo guarda el silencio. That doesn't even sound real. Like, that sounds like I made up a language. But I assure you, they checked. Supposedly I'm saying it kind of right. For the love of all things holy, write everything down. Document the shit out of all this stuff. Get badge numbers, car numbers, the agency that the officer was with, the information of witnesses that, like, witnessed what happened, okay? Get all of it. Document this. But please don't use the let me get your contact info line on a girl to get her number. You know, like, hey, you know, I was illegally arrested, so you should give me your information so that you can be a witness. You know what I'm saying, girl? Yeah. If you feel that you've been treated unfairly, contact your local chapter of the ACLU, okay? You don't have to take abuse and just go about your day. In America, people have rights. Even though some people would prefer that they didn't, they still do. Remember that. To learn more, go to www.aclu.org/know your rights.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.